All right, so no discussion about modules would be complete without a subsequent lesson on the directory structure itself. So we're actually going to get a chance to take a look at the file system finally, and get into exactly what we've been talking about. All right, directory structure. So this is the first thing that you'll notice when you open the Magento file system. Some of you, this will be your first time seeing the code. Others of you, you've been here before. You've done this dance. So in your Magento root, this is not a complete list, but these are some of the important players. You have app, JS, library, media, skin, and var. So the idea, of course, is that at the highest level, you have these kind of keywords that sort of denote what's going on. The important thing to remember, for app, for example, those files are never accessed directly by someone's browser, whereas files under skin always are. Media is for storage, libraries for different library files, and JavaScript are for your, well, we'll look at JavaScript in a second. So, and then, of course, you have index.php, your htaccess file if you're using Apache, and cron.php. So we'll be explaining all of these in a little more detail. So the app folder, this is where all of the big stuff happens. So in the app folder, you have code, which contains all of the code pools, community, core, and local. You have the design folder, and so this is where your templates and layout and some of your locale things are, if you're using some kind of custom translation files. And you actually have the locale folder itself, for different languages. So then you have JS, and everyone always gets excited when they see jQuery here, but it's jQuery is just an example of if you're using some sort of JavaScript framework, which is a decision you should make lightly because Magento, of course, uses Prototype and Scriptaculous. But you would include it under this JS folder as opposed to the JS folder under skin, unless you're only using a library for a particular theme. So basically, JavaScript files that are only used in a given theme may be put here. Now, just a quick note, because I always get asked the question, why? Why does Magento settle on Prototype? Well, the reason was development was started years and years ago, and at the time, jQuery was very young and was not suitable for what they wanted to do. Some good news, as far as I know, jQuery will be the framework of choice for Magento 2. I haven't seen that myself yet, but that's what I've been told. So, anyway, the takeaway is that if you have some sort of, whether it's a custom library or external library, this is most likely where you're going to want to put it. I'll show you the ways via the layout that you can include files from either place in a given request or across the site. So the library folder is somewhat analogous. You have all these different libraries that Magento uses. The autoloader, which we will be looking at in detail, the autoloader actually can access this directory. So we'll look at the implications of that later on. But the two big ones here, of course, are Varian and Zen. So Varian, this was, of course, Magento before it was Magento Incorporated. And then for Zen Framework, well, we talked about that in the last lesson. That's where the Zen Framework files live. So let's see, anything else? Yeah, the Lynn Libertine font. That's one more thing, because I get asked that question as well. Lynn Libertine font, that's the font that's used for your sales PDFs. And yes, I don't personally care for it, but this is the font that's actually bundled with those PDFs and actually makes those PDFs rather large. So moving along to media. Let's see. Basically, the idea is that anything that's being uploaded via the admin, for the most part, is going to end up here for a given module. So your images for categories and products are here under Media Catalog. Downloadable products under Media Downloadable, and so forth. So Yep, that's where you can go and look for that. One side note is that if you are doing some kind of version control or if you're just tarballing your site, you can make sure that you exclude media, catalog, product, cache. Those are all of the images that are requested through the image helper. They get written in their different sizes and hashed and stored there, so you can exclude that folder and still be okay, and you'll actually just keep your tarball size very much smaller, especially if you have lots of product images. All right, so the skin file folder, skin folder, admin HTML, front end, and install. These are design areas. There are lots of areas in Magento, literal areas. You have kind of event areas and configuration areas, but really the one to consider is in this case is the design area. And you'll see admin HTML, front end, and install. You'll actually see these same three folders under app design. So we'll kind of look at how those two sync up in the design lesson that we'll have on Wednesday. But just be aware that obviously for your admin-related images, CSS, JS, you can put it under admin HTML, and for anything on the front end, in the front end. And then, of course, the install, I think, explains itself. So if you wanted to custom brand the install, well, you could do that here. That's actually what the enterprise theme does. var folder is just simply for transient data. Nothing that you care about retaining should be left in var. var is sort of by definition, by design, intended to be emptied out whenever. For example, you can delete the var cache folder entirely. Magento will recreate it if it needs it. Sessions can be stored here depending on your configuration. But basically, anything in here, plan on it going away. So if you care about a certain log file, which would be under var logs, make sure you copy it. All right. So, any questions so far on the directory structure? All right. So there are no questions. It's time to look at the actual what modules look like in the file system, and this is what you'll see pretty much every time you look at a Magento module. Now, for reasons that we'll get into when we look at the autoloader, I can tell you that there are a few files here that are convention-based, and a few that are configuration-based. Now, the ones that are important to remember, well, actually, I guess I'll change that because I guess controllers is somewhat configurable. But for the most part, if you'll remember, block. Well, no, I'm sorry. I'm telling you a lot without actually having, some of you have never seen this before. But let me just say it this way. In a Magento, in the Magento module directory, you'll have block, helper, model. If you have these files, you're not required to have this structure. But you'll generally see block, helper, and model, which obviously would contain files of that type. And your controllers directory, so this is where all of your controller files go. Your Etsy directory. Now, this is where your XML configuration. So I'm sure some of you are familiar with Magento's vast use of XML, and some of you are just about to get into that delicious world. But that's where those files live. And then you have the SQL directory for upgrade scripts. And we'll be looking at those. This is one of my favorite parts of Magento, but that'll be on Thursday. So when you're configuring your module, just suffice it to say that you specify a path that will get you here to block, helper, and model. And so it's possible to change these easily in your configuration, but I always recommend that you use block, helper, and model simply because that's what Magento does, and that's what other developers will expect that you've done. Okay. So again, I guess at any meaningful module, the very simplest module that you could have would only contain an Etsy folder with some configuration file in it, config.xml. Yeah. So for each of the different types, basically what you have is you have the configuration. So from your Etsy config, you have your configuration getting you up to here, up to block. And then you have inside there basically whatever you're passing in. So instantiating things in Magento are done for blocks, helpers, and models is done through factory methods. And these factory methods take what you have configured basically up to a certain part of a string, and then after at the end of the string, we'll just look in the file system using underscores as the important, basically the file system delimiter. So what that looks like, for example, for blocks we use a function called create block. So you would see create block. And then for, we could say, let's say we have product view. That's a good block to use. So the class would be, we'll be dealing with this a lot. This is used everywhere in Magento. But just as a preview and just to kind of get you starting to think on how the file system maps to these factory methods that you'll see, we'll take, for example, Mage catalog block. And you see this right here is a string that you'll actually see in your configuration file. In fact, if you want to open up in the Etsy folder here in Mage catalog, if you look in config XML, you'll see this string. And what that does is give you basically the prefix for the class name. And then, for example, if we wanted the view.php file that's in product, you'll have product view. So, Mage catalog block product view. That's a class name. And because of the way autoloader it works in Magento, the class name effectively becomes a file path. And we'll look at that. So what that looks like when we're doing a create block is this. Catalog, product, whoops. So catalog, product underscore view. All right. Now, what you see in the configuration, Mage catalog block, that is really aliased here. So what the factory method does is it takes this, looks into configuration. If you have your configuration set up correctly, we'll find this, and that's under config global blocks. You'll see a catalog node, and then inside the catalog node, you'll see a class node, which contains this. That's called the class prefix. Simply, it's the first part of the block names for the catalog module. And then everything after this is the actual class that you want to get. So in our case, we want to get product view. So what happens is we build this string out using this, and then this string becomes eventually is going to get passed to the PHP new keyword. So, like you're normally used to instantiating classes in PHP, you would just say, new Mage catalog block product view. What happens, though, is that before PHP would throw a fatal error because it doesn't have this definition loaded. So, when the application is instantiated, you don't have, you don't have all these files being included and evaluated. It would be really slow if you did. But what you do is you define an autoloader. So PHP goes and looks here, says, or gets this definition, a request for this object, says, I don't know this class. And before it throws a fatal error, it says, do I have an autoloader declared? And of course it does. That's in your Bootstrap file. That's we'll look at that. We'll look at that in a minute. But Mage catalog block product view ends up getting passed to the autoloader. That's variant autoload class. And these underscores get, basically, actually, they get converted to spaces. So this whole thing is lowercase. These things get converted to spaces. This one would be all lowercase. Then we run UC words, add slashes here, and that's our file path. So, I don't know if that's going to totally make sense. It takes people a long time to really get this. It's a very important thing, because once you understand this, you'll save yourself a lot of time working with Magento. So, so think about it this way. This is going to look in a configuration node somewhere. I'm going to find the class prefix, Mage Catalog Block, and then we're just saying, hey, I want to use Mage Catalog Block Product View. One other note, of course, is that you can certainly camel case this if you want. I prefer to always keep it lowercase, and Magento does almost all the time as well. There are a few instances where you have camel case class names, but just remember that anything immediately following an underscore is going to be uppercased. Now, this has no implications if you're, as far as the autoloader goes, if you're on a case-insensitive file system. But if you have a case-sensitive file system, which I hope you do if you're hosting Magento, then that may have some implications. But really, just remember that all the way down in the modules, you'll have capital letters for folder names and capital letters for file names, with the exception of controllers, etc., SQL. Because Magento looks there for specific reasons. And in a way, it's a bit of a security feature. It's impossible for the autoloader to include those files. Okay, any questions? I know. It's a lot. It's a lot. But we'll be touching on this in every single lesson, really, for the rest of the class. This is very, very important. It's actually very easy once you're used to it. But I always just have to think about it this way. Catalog maps to some prefix, and then everything after the slash is going to end up being translated to some file system path. And as my last note on this, sometimes you'll see underscores here. You'll see like namespace underscore module name. So you might see Mage underscore catalog, except for the Magento namespace, they left it out. They left Mage out. But for enterprise, they didn't. So you might see enterprise underscore something. Underscores before the slash don't matter. Before the slash, it's just a string. That's a very important, that's something where people get tripped up a lot, and understandably so. But that's all I say about that, because we'll be dealing with this so much. But I do need you to start thinking about this, because this is one of the most important things. This is one of the most important things in Magento, as far as getting classes instantiated. All right, so onward. Let's see. All right, so that's the block folder. And similar, by the way, the similar thing happens with factory methods for helpers and models. And we'll look at all these factory methods as we move on. Now, the controllers. So these are the files that are going to match some requests. So if you're looking at a product page, that actually, you may see a nice URL in the browser, but what's actually happening behind the scenes, through a process that we'll look at later, is there's some configuration, of course, and then some file system matching. But the big thing to remember is that it's little c controllers. So little c controllers, these are your router files that are going to match some route that you're on, and do something with the request, we hope. So for catalog product view, that's a product page. So that would be site.com catalog product view ID 10. That would get mapped through configuration all the way up to Mage catalog controllers. And then, and again, these aren't loaded through the autoloader, but it'll get matched through configuration to Mage catalog controllers, and then from controllers into the file system. It's basically, and then once we get to the controllers folder, it actually just is more like a conventional routing system in that these are basically translated are matched based on paths. And of course, we'll look at that in detail later. But for now, just remember that the controllers are not included by the autoloader, whereas block, helper, and model are. Okay? You with me? Okay, good. Okay, so let's see. Etsy. As I mentioned earlier, Etsy, it's a place for more XML. The interesting thing, of course, is that XML and Magento, a lot of this stuff, we'll be looking at the different details of this. The important one here is config XML. So this is your module configuration file. Yeah, this one's really important. This is where you store. You can set anything for any spot in the system, any spot in configuration. It's all merged together. You can do that through your module's configuration file. And this is the second place that Magento goes for finding information about your module. The very first thing is in app Etsy modules. That's your module declaration file. And based on what you have set there, we'll look at that structure, Magento will then head here and load the actual module configuration file. Now, they're all merged together, but this is the second stop in as far as initializing your module goes. And then we'll also be looking at admin HTML and system XML on Friday as we get into our admin HTML module. So more on those later. Yeah, helper and model, more of the same. It's this exact same pattern. Different factory method, but exact same process. And the XML configuration is almost identical. You just are changing nodes. So I'll be showing you that. And as I mentioned earlier, the upgrade scripts. So you have install and upgrade scripts. These are through versioning, version number that you specify in your module configuration. These will be, the system will look for, we'll try and find files in here that match certain version number patterns, and we'll execute them. So this is quite simply how a module, you can install a module, and it will do things to the database. Very, very cool, especially if you have a team environment and you need to set some configuration automatically when someone checks out code from the repo or clones the repo. All right. Okay, so you guys are doing great so far. This is I know this is getting big here. Code pools. So if you remember earlier, we were talking about the app folder, and we have app code. And inside app code are our code pools, community, core, and local, or in order of precedence as far as the autoloader is concerned, local, community, and core. So what happens with the autoloader is, and if you look in Mage, yes, let's take a look at this really fast. This is very, very important. All right, so I want you guys to open up the Bootstrap file. That's app Mage. So through an initialization process, which we will discuss, a request comes into the index file, index.php, and that file will include appmage.php. So that's here. So again, that's under your Magento root, under app Mage. And this contains the Mage class itself, along with some auto-loading magic. So basically what we have to do is set up this environment where Magento can go and find these classes that are being requested. So again, all these factory methods do is build a class name. And then based on the class name, if we don't have a definition present in PHP, the autoloader kicks in because it's been included here and registered. And we define basically the paths where everything is looked up. So in order of precedence, you have local, community, core, and then lib. So if you have the same file path under local as you do under core, the definition of the file that is found under local would be included first. I hope that makes sense. And there are heaps of tutorials that recommend overriding Magento functionality that way. It's completely wrong. Magento gives you numerous ways to change functionality of existing classes, or core classes, and I'll show you that stuff. Don't use this. You really pretty much should never, ever need to do this. So if you look in the lib folder here for variant autoload, so lib variant autoload, that's this file here. Let's make this bigger. And this is where your class names are converted to file paths. So the underscores are, the underscores are first replaced with spaces. So this class name, Mage Catalog Block Product View, is passed into string replace. Replace the underscores with spaces. Run UC words. So that's going to uppercase each word. And then use the directory separator, which we have defined previously, and replace the spaces with the directory separator. So that's the process. Basically, any underscore here is effectively going to be translated into a slash, and then we're going to include that file right here. And then, of course, the very last part of the class name, in this case view, will just append.php to it. That's how that works. That's autoloading in Magento. That's probably caused, thousands and thousands of developers, thousands and thousands of hours just by not understanding it. So just remember, you can check the functionality out there, but the things to remember: catalog block product view, in this case, Mage catalog block product view. This is the class name that's built by the factory method. And then basically it's between PHP and the autoloader to figure out where it's found. That's it. It's that simple. It takes a little while to understand, but it's that simple, I promise. Any questions? Okay, good. All right. So, code pools. Code pool is a unique directory that consists of grouped code. Yeah, code pools. The important thing in Magento, those code pools: core, community, local. Now, again, the important thing as far as Magento finding your module's configuration, Magento will look under wherever you set your code pool in your module declaration. Now, and more on that later, but really, for right now, just remember that code pools are under app code, and you have core, community, and local. And generally, community are for released extensions, release modules that are out there for more than one person. Local will be where you'll be doing a lot of your own work. Effectively, they're all just places in the file system. It just so happens that the system looks in local first, then will look in community, and then will look in core as far as finding files goes. So, app code core, you will never do anything in here, except in a couple of the examples that I have. The only time you're ever allowed to edit this code is when you're being taught Magento. So this is for the core team only, i.e. Magento employees. And you may find yourself going in there to, you'll drop in a little die or a logging function or something, and that's okay. But you need to make sure it's reverted, and then certainly before you commit any code, hopefully you're seeing some sort of changes when you go to commit your code, or certainly when you go to deploy code, you really need to make sure that this is absolutely clean. It can be, I think, a little embarrassing to have white space differences or even just some debugging code present in something that you're releasing and that someone else is going to see. I'm sure I've been guilty of it myself. But yeah, for the cardinal rule is don't change anything in here despite whatever any tutorial might have told you. So app code community, again, this is where extension developers will go and put some code. This is a place for them to put their modules. You could put your modules here as well. But in general, any custom stuff, especially if you are customizing something for a particular client, or for your business, if you're here from a company that uses Magento, will be in app code local. Now you remember this. This is from appmage.php. This was the part at the top. So this include path order, the order of precedence, local, community, core. Again, that's where this comes from. It's just simply the order in which we build out this array, and then the string. Yeah, it's that easy. Any questions? Okay, you guys are doing well. One note, fresh from the Magento development team, you can add your own code pool. For example, app code debug. You could just simply put it, if you want to put it, add it to this array. Or you can, if you want, add it in this way and just sort of prepend your path ahead of all the other paths. And that way you could include your own custom implementation of this, the product view block for debugging purposes, based on your IP address. Yeah. Just a hint, you can use it. It's very cool. Namespaces. So, what is a namespace? It's just a folder. We have to do this for the time being in PHP. This will keep us from having any kind of collisions. So for Magento, the namespace is Mage. So basically, the namespace is going to be the first folder underneath a code pool. E.g., app code core Mage, or app code core enterprise. Mage is a namespace. Enterprise is a namespace. And what that does is it keeps us from installing a module. It should keep us from installing a module and overriding anything. Yeah, pretty simple concept. So here, the namespace would be training, and the module would be foo. It's a very important module. It's foo. So you could also, and this actually demonstrates exactly why it's needed. It's a convention among many developers, myself included. If you're going to override, if you're going to basically rewrite a class either to change some functionality or add functionality, what you can do via configuration, and we'll be doing this shortly. I like to, if I'm looking at a module, because we deal with lots of different clients, so I may not remember 8 months from now what's been sort of customized for a given site. I know I can look under app code local in my company's namespace, and if I see something, a module name that is identical to a core module name, I'll know that I'm probably rewriting something. So if we were to use the Mage namespace, Mage catalog, and specify app code local, Mage catalog, block product view, well then the Magento core file wouldn't actually ever be evaluated, because the definition would be found through the autoloader in our namespace first, or in the local code pool first. Sorry, not our namespace, if I have Mage here. And that is not good. You have to have a really, really good reason to do that. And the only time I ever see it used in any kind of justifiable way would be to override abstract classes, or some base classes that lots of other classes extend from. And that almost always, more often than not, is an indication of a bad implementation. That's not universal or unilateral, but you really, if your solution to a problem is to override an entire core file, you're probably doing something wrong. Call me first. All right, so locating templates. So we're good. So now we've covered basically the app code space and the autoloader, and no one has gotten up and left the class yet. That's really good. I'm very pleased with all of you. So on to templates. So this is one thing, and it also is my understanding that in Magento 2 this is going to change. Again, I'm only talking about things that I've heard other people talk about that got to go to Ibiza for the conference while I was here teaching Magento, which was way more fun than Ibiza, I promise. So it's my understanding that templates will be part of your module, your modules directory. That's what I hear. No guarantees yet, but for right now, to find templates in Magento, you would look under App Design, and then an area name, package name, theme name, template folder. So I know this is kind of a frustrating hierarchy to remember, but generally if it's a front-end template, so customer-facing, it'll be app design front end. And if it's an admin template, it'll be app design admin HTML. Okay? Those are area names, simply. Package names, these are all just folders, ultimately. But package name in Magento is really just a folder specified in the admin, as well as theme. There's a whole other system, though, the design fallback that operates. So these can be kind of variable, these two, depending on whether Magento finds a file in a certain place. And, of course, we have a whole lesson devoted to that. So you'll understand that in a bit. But an important thing to remember is when you are specifying a template file, in the case of a block, you would call set template, and then you just simply pass in a file path. So you only specify the file path relative to the template folder. So under here, you might have catalog product view.phtml, and coincidentally, that would be the product view template. So you would call set template catalog/product/view.phtml. And you notice how you don't have template, you don't have theme, package, or area name in there. That's just simply how that system works. So that's where you find templates. So feel free to take a look there. Your default templates may be found in app design front end, well, for the front end, app design front end, base, default, template. And that's sort of the ultimate fallback. That's the ultimate fail-safe. So, yeah. More on that later. And similarly, with layout XML files, which can be declared by your module, you'll have, again, app design and then front end, package name, front end, package name, or admin HTML, package name, theme name, and then a layout folder. And in your module configuration, you only declare things relative to the folder that contains them, the layout folder. So by convention now, Magento didn't really do this at the beginning, but it's now sort of the convention to do this, and that is to have a folder under layout, like with your namespace, and I like to use namespace _ module name, and then your actual layout file. And, of course, we'll be doing this as well, so you'll get to actually see this in action. Now, skins. So skins are also specified in configuration, or you fall back to front end, for example, front end base default. But, yeah, it's a similar convention. Instead of app design or skin design, you just have app design front end or skin front end, and then your package name, your theme name. Specify this information, and then you can use your namespace. I'll let you look through that and decide what structure works for you. We'll talk about some of the implications about how you do this a little bit later on. But yeah, this is where skins are found, and the skin assets are found. So the other thing is JavaScript. And JavaScript, as I mentioned at the beginning of this lesson, is found right under right under the directory root. And generally you'll have some sort of namespace. For example, you might have JS Enterprise, and then some sort of the module name. It's really up to you. You always declare these sort of system-wide JavaScript files. You reference them relative to the JS folder. So the call would be for the head block, add JS, and then you specify a path. And then I think this is the last directory. Again, transient data. The goal here, of course, is just you would always want a namespace. Protect your module information somehow, so you could have namespace module name. You don't have to do this. It's just recommended. But obviously anything under var is considered OK for deletion at any given time. OK, so now we're going to just, I'll lead you through as we go and find these different files that I was just talking about in the file system. OK, so our first task is to find page.xml layout file. So It's obviously not a configuration file, so this is going to be a layout file. You'll see this, unless you see something like config or system.xml, you're going to need to look in the design folder, basically. So the location of this file, let's see. So if you're using a community edition, you would only a fresh community edition. You would only need to look under App Design Front End, Base, Default, Layout, and Page XML. So this is a layout file. We'll be dealing with this in depth. If you've never used Layout XML before, it's very cool. I'm glad you're taking this class because it'll really help make a difference in your understanding of Layout XML. As I know, a lot of people they hate this with Magento because they don't. It's a little hard to understand. It's quite a unique implementation for MVC, but I promise you that we'll help this make a lot of sense. Yeah, we'll help this make a lot of sense for you, and yeah, more on that later. So the basic structure, of course, is a layout node that contains layout update instructions. This is included based on a module configuration. So in the config XML of Mage Page module, there's just the appropriate XML and value for the system to go and find this file. Now, those of you, though, with Enterprise, so just a brief note on the fallback, Enterprise default layout also has a page XML. And based on your theme settings, if Magento finds this page XML first, that's the one it will use. Won't ever look in base default. So that's how the fallback works. More on that later. So that's page XML. And now the product model. Well, some of you will know immediately where to find it. Others of you will need to look around. I'll tell you that it's in the catalog module. The catalog contains products and categories, and you can find that under App Code Core Mage Catalog. And we're looking for the product model, so I guess it stands to reason that we would find it under Catalog Model, and here we have Product. And so I'll take a second to point out again, Mage Catalog Model Product. You see the class name there, and then if you're paying attention, you are paying attention, right? You'll see that this is exactly, this kind of mirrors the path that we took to find this file. So again, in the config XML here, under Etsy, config, if I search for models, so global models catalog. Incidentally, this node is what we pass to the factory method. So for models, it's just simply Mage get model is one opportunity, and that string, catalog, gets mapped, or basically is where Magento, the configuration object, Mage core model config, looks to find the class prefix. So based on saying get model catalog / product, that's how we would get this to this product model class. The catalog is taken, matched here, and we use this as a class prefix. So this class here, even though it says class, I really wish it said class prefix because this is not an actual class. It's just simply the first part of the class name. And then whatever was after the slash, so we have catalog / product, gets appended here with an underscore. And we get this, Mage catalog model product. The system we'll call new on it. So new Mage catalog model product. The definition isn't present. So the autoloader kicks in, and then we go on this file path let's see, Mage, Mage, catalog, catalog, model, model, and product.php. That works all the time. So again, just continue to think about it. I'm going to say this a dozen more times at least in the course of this class because it's very important to understand. And it sounds very simple, but it just takes a while to get into your brain. Incidentally, the fact that it extends Mage catalog model abstract, this wouldn't go through the factory method. This just gets called directly, and so the autoloader will also have to find this. And it does the same thing, Mage catalog model abstract, yeah. Mage catalog model abstract.php. Very good. All right, so that's 2. Now let's go on to the third one, order collection. Orders are entities that exist under the sales module. So we have Mage and sales. Now, their collections are models. They are also stored in basically according to configuration. But what we have here, let's see. Their collections are a special kind of model. We'll be talking about the different types of models. And they are found along a different configured path in the module structure. So in this case, it's sales model MySQL 4 order collection. And this particular one will make a lot more sense to you once you've seen resource models configuration. But again, up to a certain point, we have a configuration, and that's actually Mage sales model MySQL 4. And then after that, it's a similar factory method call. It's just, you could call get resource collection. I'm sorry, get resource model sales / order _ collection. And through a similar process as we saw with the product model, the configuration would get you up to Mage sales model MySQL 4. And then the order _ collection would get us to here. All right. Good. Hope some of you are starting to get this. All right. Now, just a couple more that are fairly interesting to me as well. The checkout JavaScript. The first time I went looking for this, I was pleasantly surprised. The first time I went looking for this, I was pleasantly surprised. And by pleasantly, I mean not totally pleasantly surprised. You might expect it to be found under JS. That's a reasonable place to look. So under JS, well, there's Varian, there's Mage, some translate. Varian, we have accordion, configure. Nothing here. And interestingly enough, it's actually under the skin folder. And the reason for this, of course, is that the checkout.js, this is tied to the theme. So basically, if you're customizing steps, if you have differently named identified blocks, the system has to have a way to find them, and that's in OP checkout.js. So here you see we're actually looking for some hard-coded IDs from the template. And if you don't have these, or if you change them, or whatever, well, you would need to change this. So this JS file is located in the theme because it's dependent on the theme itself. So that's the difference there. Now, Variant Data Collection DB. By now, if you remember, we were looking for the autoloader under lib Varian. So we have lib, variant, but the exact same thing holds true. Variant underscore data underscore collection underscore DB. Just simply replace those. Just simply replace those for variant data collection DB. Just simply replace the underscores with slashes in your mind and add a .php to the end. That's all you have to do, and you know that based on the autoloader, we're going to look in AppCode core, AppCode local, AppCode community, AppCode core, and then lib. So under lib, we have variant data collection DB. Very good. Any questions? Okay, cool. All right, so let's close this up and get ready for the next lesson.